Hey everybody, we're live. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the Alan Smith Hobby and War Games podcast, where we talk about all things gaming, wargaming especially, and other topics come up from time to time, and that's fine. We like to riff here on the channel. All right, a couple quick things to go over. I always start my podcast approximately 10 minutes early. I can have a little chance to go over today's topic, and this is part of a series, guys, for Black Seas. If you're not playing Black Seas, I highly recommend you get the Master and Commander starter box. No, this is not a paid promo, but I do highly recommend the game. Now, today, on today's show, we're going to go over here to my Discord group, and we got 25 solid members. I think we lost a couple members this week, guys. One of my new videos, I was ragging on the vaccine a little bit, poking a little fun. And apparently some people are either vaxxers or anti-vaxxers. Anyway, today's show, we're focusing in on the French Navy and the Age of Sail, and primarily zeroing in on the West and the West. What was it? You got the Eastern Indies and the Western Indies. Now we're focusing on the Western Indies, which would be the Caribbean to us today. However, back in the day, they referred to it as the West Indies. Now the French had some exposure to the Eastern West Indies, what we now call the Eastern Caribbean. Several of these islands I have been to personally, so I can speak from experience. And we are also going to talk about the British involvement and the constant push and pull between the British Navy and the French Navy during this time period. Now, Black Seas covers a 60-year period, guys. 1770 to 1830, right? So this is an important period of naval history, number one. Number two, it's just a great period to game in, whether you're playing American War of Independence, whether you're playing Napoleonics. This is a great period. Now, we're also going to tee up this period with the French and the French West Indies as a great area to do scenarios where we could do setups on islands, on some of the islands with 28 mil or 15 mil figs, and then we can fight sea battles and make it all part of the same scenario, right? So, so that's what we have coming to you today on the podcast. So sit tight. We're going to be working on that here soon. We're going to give more people time to get into the room, and then we'll start to move forward. Now, I'm going to pull up something else I've been working on here in the studio today, or this week in general. Also today, I printed a couple of these already today, and we're going to bring that up here for you guys. And if any of you guys have not dealt with this, I highly recommend you get on Thingiverse. If you're not 3D printing already, you need to get a 3D printer. I'm using the Giddy Pro, the Giddy X Maker. It's a great machine. And you can see here what I found this week, since I'm getting back into doing more Star Wars Legion. I am building a board right now with new terrain, and you can see all the varied trees that I can print. Now, I had to scale them down. My X Maker won't print as high as some of these trees, so I just basically shortened them down, and they're printing amazing. I printed them in black PLA, and the black PLA will allow me to only have to dry brush these. I'm going to paint some in like a shade of gray and some in the shade of brown, and mix them with some of my tree stands, my standard 28, 15 millimeter tree stands, and printing things like the Imperial Bunker I've printed this week. I have printed little huts that the excuse me, the little locals, like the little Ewoks could live in, little creatures like that, like a little village, stuff like that I'm putting on the board. I'm also getting ready to start painting out my Wookiees and my Chewbacca so I can play those on this board, and painting up another squad of Rebel troopers to flesh out the game. So it's going to be fun. I'm going to do a test battle, and we'll be bringing that to you as a mini bat rep here in the coming week. So stay tuned to the channel for that. Yeah, so we're doing lots of stuff here in the studio. It's a lot of fun, and we have got some things going on here. Now, I can't say enough good things about the Giddy X Maker. Let's see. I'm going to get that pulled up here for you guys so you can see it. If you're looking at getting a 3D printer, you can get it pulled up here for you. eBay's got them for $479. That's a little pricey. I got mine on Amazon for $338. I'm going to bring it up here for you guys. And I've loved this printer. Now, a lot of these guys will tell you, oh, you can't print out of the box, right? You have to make it another hobby, right? I'm telling you right now, this machine, you can print out of the box. In 30 minutes, guys, I was making my first Black Seas ship card within 30 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up here for you. So there you go. You've got the Giddy X Maker, and then there's the Giddy X Maker Pro, which is larger than this one. So yeah, I would highly recommend this printer. It's amazing. You basically got an enclosed area here, guys, which keeps the temperature where it should be. If you're in an area, or even here in Ohio in the summer, we got AC cranking in the house. It's hot and humid outside. That can affect your print. So this gives you an enclosed environment where everything is controlled, and it prints in various materials. I'm using PLA, but I tell you, I've been cranking out stuff for these. I'm calling it my Kashyyyk board, right, where the Wookiees live, and it's going to turn out great. I've got a lot of stuff printed. I just have to prime and paint. So yeah, so highly recommend it. Big Dog is in the house. How you doing, Big Dog? Good to see you. And we're about ready to get started. We got 3 more minutes. We are going to get the podcast started. And let's go ahead and we're going to pull back up. How am I sounding, guys? Simon's in the house. How are we doing on the audio? Sounding good? All right. And here we are, April 18th, 2021. Last couple weeks, I've been pretty busy. One Sunday, we took a nice bike ride. My wife and I, we put a video of that up on Exploring with the Smiths. Sounds good to me. Thanks, Big Dog. And we got Simon in the house. Hey, Simon. He's also known as the Wizard. Now get over here on the Discord group, guys. Go back further back in my video chain. I have an entire video dedicated to our Discord group, and I do have a link in the description box you can click on. It will bring you into the group. Now, we don't want any nervous Nellies and little soft pansy pantses. That's one of the reasons I left Facebook weeks and weeks ago. Have a little tougher skin, guys. Every little thing is not meant as a personal attack, okay? What is happening to our culture? Everyone's becoming, well, not everyone, a lot of people becoming little weaklings, if you know what I'm talking about. over here on our Discord group, in preparation for the podcast, as an example, I put up a lovely picture here of French Saint Martin and some articles I pulled off of the web. One is the French West Indies, and we can scroll down. I've also got a nice picture of the Caribbean Sea we're going to be talking about here today, guys. It will show you all of the French islands. Saint Martin, I've been to Saint Martin. Let's see if I can pull up a bigger version of this map here real quick, guys. Bear with me. So yeah, hope everybody's had a good week. Last good few weeks. Let's see. Last Sunday, we were fetching my daughter from university. She came home for spring break, and with the coof, she's going to do Zoom until the end of the semester for another 3 weeks. Pretty much a big ripoff, if you ask me. That's so they were able to cut off the last 3 weeks of school because the teachers don't want to. I don't understand it. Most of those people at the university, from what I understand, have been vaccinated. All right, so here's French West Indies. Got something going on here. Yep. And I'm getting some kind of a message. Let's go ahead and let's put up this map. Let's see if I can get it bigger. St. Kitts, I've been to St. Kitts. I've been to St. Bart's. I've been to St. Martin. Guadeloupe and Martinique are the two main areas we'll be focusing on today, guys, when we start talking about the French, and it's coming up right now. And we've got Sammy coming into the room. He's finishing up dinner. It's about 7 p.m. there in the UK. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the history of the French Navy. We're not going to get too deep, but I wanted to make some basic points here with the French Navy. Very similar kind of trajectory that the British Navy had. There were ebbs, there were flows. We had periods where they were expanding their Navy when they were flush with cash, especially once they had some colonies going in the East Indies, which we would call Southeast Asia. And they were taking those monies and building either their military or their Navy up. But let's get that screen up here for you guys. And you'll see here the history of the French Navy. So let's take it a little step by step here. Basically, they've broken this down into various periods of the kings. We got Louis the 13th, the 14th, 15th, and 16th. Then we have the French Revolution, and the French Navy had all kinds of problems during this period. And there were also several periods here as it pertains to the Caribbean where particularly Martinique, one of the main islands, the strongholds of the French in the West Indies, was taken by the British. So we're taking it up to the period of around 1830, which is what Black Seas covers, right? And we're looking at our French frigate here for the game that I have built here. Great little models, great little ships, lots of detail. And 8 p.m. there in the UK. Interesting. All right, so you guys are 5 hours ahead of us. But you can see here that we've got a lot of great information out there. I'm not showing my ship, and I wasn't up on the screen. Sorry, guys. So you can see these basically by the It's like a light gold and a blue color when you see the French ships out at sea. And yeah, so basically there was ebb and flow, and there wasn't as much involvement in the West Indies as the British and the Dutch and the Spanish. The French were just not as involved with the colonization of those areas. They pretty much stayed along that chain of islands that I just showed you. Has anyone who's in the room or on the podcast, has any of you guys ever been to the French West Indies ever? That would be a good starting point. So yeah, we got Montserrat, Antigua, Barbuda, St. Bart's. There was a whole chain there. Dominica, been to Dominica, St. Lucia, right? We're talking just southeast of Puerto Rico. So those of us in the States who want to fly to, say, Guadeloupe or Martinique, we would fly from the States to Puerto Rico. And typically some of the airlines out of New York will fly direct flights to Guadeloupe and Martinique. But it's pricey. If you do a couple layovers, either Florida and then to Puerto Rico, sometimes they'll lay you over in South Carolina, then take you to Puerto Rico when we've done cruises out of Puerto Rico. And then a cruise is a great way to go too, because you'll fly into Puerto Rico. Most of the cruise lines have boats coming out of there, and you'll get to see 8 or 9 of the islands during your trip, depending on how long of a trip you're taking. We're talking Bahamas and Nassau is the closest I've been, Simon says. Yeah, so Bahamas is going to be British. That was a British protectorate. I still believe they do have some ties to the British, especially Bermuda. There's a British naval base there and a U.S. naval base in Bermuda. There's another great place to go, guys, especially from Europe. I think a lot of the airlines will do direct flights from Europe straight to Bermuda. Beautiful island, spotless, no trash, and just a great place to visit. So let's roll this in, guys, with wargaming this period. We've got Guadeloupe. We have Martinique. Let's get this map up here for you guys. And I wish they had a quicker way of doing this on StreamYard, but they do not. I should be able to line up all of these tabs and just click on them, but you can't. You got to go out, go back in, blah, blah, blah. One of the downsides to StreamYard, I'm giving this a try for 1 year, see how I like it. Let's see how good you guys can see this map. All right, so you can see here how they flow right down. St. Martin, St. Bart's, St. Kitts, small little islands. And then you got Guadeloupe is the largest, and they even have a chain of islands around Guadeloupe, right? And then here's Martinique. Beautiful. They're considered the more, basically more prosperous areas of the Caribbean. The economies are pretty good in those 2 islands, and the better standard of living. I can tell you they're very clean, and the infrastructure is better maintained than other Caribbean islands I've been to. So lots of good stuff to do down there. If you guys cannot get down there, I highly encourage you to try your best to go to the Caribbean. It's a fascinating area of the world. Lots of fun things to do, lots of great food. So the history of the French Navy is basically pretty sketchy. And welcome, Sammy.
Yeah. How you doing, right?
Doing great, man. How was dinner?
Good. Yeah, so I rushed it a bit.
Oh,
It's nice, lamb chops.
Oh, nice. Sounds good. Yeah, we're just going over here the French Navy, how it was basically kind of a sketchy background. Now, the Battle of the Chesapeake around the War of Independence, they beat the British one time there. And the British and the French went back and forth and back and forth. Even in the Caribbean, like I said, Martinique changed hands several times, especially during the French Revolution and up through the Napoleonic period. But one of the agreements at the end of when Napoleon was finally deposed and sent to first Elba, and of course, then they later sent him that little island off the coast of Africa, Corsica, I think it was. They gave Martinique back to the French, and they've controlled it ever since. So that was kind of the central island where a lot of the French Navy would be holed up down there to protect their merchant ships.
Where's this exactly?
What's that?
Whereabouts is this?
Martinique. It would
Martinique.
be, back then they called it the French West Indies, or in general the West Indies, which we now call the Caribbean. So I'll put that map back up here. So you'll see there, it kind of is a little string of islands there. Let's see if I can get that map any bigger. I don't think I can. I tell you, it's really hard to get maps on the internet here, guys.
Yeah. Good ones.
Yeah, good ones. So,
so that's in the Caribbean, you're saying, yeah?
Yeah, the Eastern Caribbean. So,
Eastern Caribbean.
You'll see Puerto Rico. I'll put that map back up. No, I got rid of it. So, let me pull up a better map here, guys.
Has he gone? Oh, I'm here by myself now. Yeah, so I think we've got connection issues. We'll just wait for Alan to get back in.
I'm back. I think I had a bug in my internet.
Oh, right. Okay.
That was weird. So I'm back up. So let's see if I can pull up a better map here for us, guys. I'm just going to go to Google Earth. And we're going to go zoom right into Puerto Rico, one of my favorite places. There we go. This is what I should have done to
Puerto Rico, the tax haven.
Right. Live and learn here, guys, with the internet. Google Maps. We'll bring this up. This will be better. Right. So here we are. We got Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
Puerto Rico. There's Dominican Republic, Haiti. You don't want to go there. Dominican Republic's not too bad. But so essentially, so everybody can put this picture in their head of where we're speaking in the world. So I'm going to zoom out again. We're going to go, there's Venezuela. There's Cuba. We're hoping now that the last Castro's out of power down there as of this week, may see them shed communism, and we can actually, because every time we've sailed past here on a cruise ship, it is a huge island, and I bet you that would just be a great destination for people to go and have fun.
Yeah, my brother went there a few years ago.
So it looks amazing. It's very forested. But here's the British Virgin Islands are just east of Puerto Rico, right?
Right, yeah.
And then you go down this string. So the main ones that the French were controlling would be Martinique and Guadeloupe.
Yeah.
Now, Martinique went back and forth. I don't know the story with Guadeloupe. I think the issue was the French had two large forts on Guadeloupe, and it was not as easy to take from by the British. So you're going to see a lot of operation out of this string of islands where there were sugar plantations, spices, the same thing the other Caribbean islands had. And they needed to protect those shipments. Not as much, we're not talking about a lot of gold and silver necessarily. It was mostly trade goods going from here back to Europe and also up to the colonies for America. And so you would have some privateer action going on from the Spanish, from the British.
I think there were actually some pirate ports, some of those islands as well at some points.
Absolutely.
In the north coast of there, then right down the south near the top of the actual mainland of South America.
Right.
It's
Elba.
definitely something
Corsica is where
to.
Napoleon is from. So yeah, Corsica, and then Simon, what was the Sammy show? We got there was that final island where he finally died.
Right, yeah,
It was
and
off.
that was after the Waterloo. He was shipped off there, wasn't it?
Yeah, they finally bottled him up, and
Yes,
I think
he was from Corsica, wasn't he? He was
he was from
originally,
Corsica.
yeah.
That's right.
Which is a strange little island because I think it's always changed hands between the Italians and the French many times.
Yes, and it was another one traded back and forth, and yeah, the French had a big influence at that period of time over Italy. So
Mm.
yeah, I mean, we're talking just like Spain. They're a Catholic, so yeah, a lot of times through this 60-year period of Black Seas, um, is they were pretty much in alliance with the Spanish, right? A lot of the time, and they were basically both fighting against the British. So it just basically went back and forth. But there's all kinds of scenario games you can play. There's lots of little islands that were around Guadeloupe and Martinique. You could model possibly or make a board, just a throw together board with some felt like I do, or I mean some fleece, and make your own scenario game, right? French Navy was pretty much as powerful as the British through most of this period. Now, it ebbed and flowed, like I said at the start of the show. There were periods where, during the French Revolution in particular, 1791, that the French Navy was basically hamstrung. They stopped training guys to fire the cannons, so their gunnery fell off. Simon had put up a nice article of a battle in this period, during the French Revolution, where the French and the British fought basically the Bay of Biscayne. I'm pretty sure, right, Simon? And but both of them claimed victory. The French lost ships where the British did not lose any ships. But the French came home and said they won. The British came home and said they won. So there was a lot of this nonsense that went on during this period of time. And it was basically the French were known for having faster ships, better built ships, apparently. Especially after the Americans won their independence, they were building ships for the French, which is one of the main reasons the French were basically allies with the colonists. They wanted access to those lumber contracts, and they wanted new ships.
They had the Dutch building a lot of them for them as well, didn't they? Originally.
Yep. And, the Dutch and the French, they would go at it from time to time, but the Dutch were pretty much Southern Caribbean, whereas the French were Eastern Caribbean and the British were more Northern Caribbean, is kind of a good way to look at it. And then, of course, we had the Port of New Orleans, which was obviously French. Most of the southern United States, we had St. Augustine, which was Spanish, would be just on the north part of Florida on the coast. So everybody had their dibs on their own little area, and they would, when one of them was fighting a war with someone and getting on the weak side, the other, say the British or the Spanish, would attack and take over their colonies for 10, 20, sometimes 30 years. But the French are going to be more scarce in the Caribbean as opposed to the Dutch, the Spanish, and the British is the thing that really stood out to me when I researched this. So yeah, it's still a rich area to play for Black Seas. You can, get out your French ships, frigates. I don't think you would have found ships of the line necessarily in the Caribbean at any time. It would have been frigates or smaller vessels protecting the merchant ships going back and forth. So anyone else want to chime in here? Anyone know anything about this period of the French Navy and the Caribbean in particular?
One thing I'll say is definitely that they, I think they were struggling originally when they wanted to start building up their ships. So originally, you've got to remember that their main threat was from the land, because obviously they were fighting Austria, then they were fighting Italy, they were fighting up in the Dutch sometimes, and I guess having that solid landmass meant that training a navy sometimes was less of a priority. And also, obviously, they had to have, whenever they decided to build a navy, they had to have a Mediterranean navy and then an Atlantic navy. So that was another kind of challenge. And I think when they originally, I was reading on Wikipedia as well, and I think originally when they wanted to build up a navy under King Louis the 18th or 17th, I think it might be 17th originally. Obviously, they wanted to commission a load of these, what are they called, the galleys, just for the Mediterranean. But obviously, they needed so many slaves to actually operate those, and they didn't have enough. And also, the other issue was not having enough of these deep harbored kind of ports to actually build a lot of these man of war ships.
Right.
And obviously, the Bay of Biscay was very. I don't know if you've ever gone through the Bay of Biscay, but it's some of the worst seas in the world. It's so rough. Like
Yeah.
whenever I've even flown over there in a plane, it's you get terrible turbulence. It's infamous.
Right. And so if it was Louis the 16th you're talking about, he was the last one right before the revolution there.
Right. Yeah.
And
that seems to be the first time they really committed to building up a big navy.
Right. And yeah, I kind of read some of that stuff too. Some of the kings would get a little cash strapped, right? Because they would be fighting, like you said, a war with Austria or Prussia. And the money would be a little scarce. And then, of course, they had the French Marines would be on these vessels. And like you said, a lot of this was supportive allies, like in the case of the American War of Independence. They would they had a lot of ships and troops over there. Of course, the French and Indian Wars, they were up in the Chesapeake. So all these countries during this period, in terms of us gaming, they were stretched pretty thin a lot of times. Master and Commander, I mean, that was a boat basically on patrol, and they were by themselves, right? They weren't sailing around with these huge flotillas, right? So yeah, there were some big battles, like the one that Simon had put up on our Discord group the other day. But most of the time, you just didn't have those giant ship battles like everyone envisions. And most of that's going to occur, as much as I love to play on the Caribbean, a lot of that stuff just occurred in the Atlantic, right? Either, like you said, in the Bay of Biscayne, up in the English Channel, along the U.S. coast, East Coast, fighting, or the Chesapeake Bay battle, where they were really going to have a throwdown, and you can have these big battles. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet for the May game. The end of May, we're going to be doing that 12-foot ocean map, and how exactly the scenario is going to go. I wanted to build a coastal fort that could be controlled by, let's say, maybe either the French or the British. And so either or. I don't know how I'm going to play it out yet, but I was going to play it so if you got a ship, say French, near the coast where the British had guns, they would shoot at your ships. I haven't figured out how I'm going to play that out yet, but I want to do something kind of like that.
Yeah, of course. So it's more challenging when you've got those long, a longer board, because you don't want to kind of dominate the gaming board with it. You've got a long, thin gaming board, so maybe down one end, one far end, and then the other far end, there's alternate sides or something. And how, what range do you put on these ships? Because I guess you don't want it to dominate the game too much, do you? But you want to have an element there.
Right. I'm kind of thinking having the ships of the line sailing up and down in the middle. I don't know. We're going to see how it plays out. Well, we're going to have Paul. He is building an American fleet. I have French, British, and pirate. So I can pretty much do anything. I'm finishing up my first rates right now. So we'll see. We're trying to get a couple other players on the game so everyone can have a faction.
Yeah.
And see kind of if we could have a good scenario or a goal to the game kind of thing. But that's kind of where we're at on this. Am I going to be able to play that as Caribbean? I don't know. We're going to play it like the East Coast of America, where maybe we have an area controlled by the British, another area controlled by the French. I don't know. But anyone else out there want to chime in? If with your Black Seas, is anyone
any scenarios or anything like that?
Any scenarios? Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna see how this game works out. This will be the first time I've played done a mega
Yeah.
Mega Black Seas battle.
How many ships are you thinking about having on the board then, roughly?
I'm thinking at least 20.
Right, 20 total. Yeah. And how many players?
Right now we have 3, so we need at least one more. I really like to play 2v2 if we can.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And we did a 3v3 game. One guy was sick and couldn't make it, but that's always fun. 3v3. That's usually a nice long game, right? Getting everybody's moves in. But
that last battle report you did was entertaining, especially with all the terrain.
Yeah, it was terrain intensive, and the hills really add a lot, I think.
Yeah, massively.
They're literally hiding behind the hills.
Yeah, and it seems to be that's almost how it was done. A little bit. Well, especially when I've seen these things like Game of Tanks online. I've never played it, but I've seen people play, and a lot of it is that sneaking up on them, getting the right angle. Getting those shots in on the side armor or the rear armor.
That's the trick. And the other thing we learn is you need scouts. Now, they had scouts as Americans. As Germans, we didn't pay for any scouts on our lists. So they always had the jump on us. And also with their artillery, right?
Oh yeah, the artillery. You said the artillery took out quite a few vehicles at the start.
The Allied artillery is tough, so you have to keep moving as a German player. You keep your stuff spread out, not in big blobs of tanks.
So that wasn't supposed to represent dive bombers. That was actually physical artillery.
Yeah, they call it on that game battle group. It's off-board artillery, so you don't really have to have the models, right, like you do in Flames of War. But the other thing is resupply. Either they have resupply trucks and jeeps where they can bring you more shells, because in battle group you can only, let's say for a Panther, you only have 8 rounds, and you can decide, do you want them all armor piercing? Do you want some of them high explosive?
Yeah.
And you use your little markers, and once you start getting low, you need to have a resupply truck or that tank.
That's realistic, I guess, because there wasn't much space in those tanks, and I guess those rounds were pretty big.
That's right. And that really limits you, and you're just not going around shooting at everything.
Yeah.
And you do have to pay for a resupply, which we did not have, which the Allies had. So they basically just wore us down over the game. Essentially, I was getting low on rounds on a bunch of my equipment. John was able to pop in. Hey, John. Hi, guys. Just picked up the Royal Navy fleet box to go with the U.S. fleet and starter set. Yeah, it's nice. They take a little time since they're 1/700th. There are some fair amount of details to pick out, but not too bad. It really isn't. And the rigging is not as bad. I did an abbreviated rigging, but I highly encourage anybody, once you're open to another game. And you're open to some more painting and building, this is a great rule set. The rule set's a lot of fun on how you move the ships, the collisions with other ships. A lot of nice little elements. Now, something Paul and I agreed we're going to do this coming game is we're going to do more of the advanced rules, which would be grappling and boarding. So we'd have actions where we're actually fighting fisticuffs as a battle, like they did in Master and Commander. Yeah. So we want to expand it out. I know John is more versed in the nitty gritty parts of the rules. Some of the modifiers for if you're firing at a ship that's at full battle sail, things like that, those are technically the advanced rules. But
I wonder, is there any rules to turn a ship into a fire ship? Is there rules to allow for that?
They're part of the advanced rules.
It seems like you've got quite a lot of layers of advanced rules in that game. So it depends how deep you want to go.
Right. And they're finding more of the, like even Star Wars Legion, Star Wars X-Wing, some of the sci-fi games are getting that way. Let's see. I'm going to see if I can pull up. I think it was under the general discussion.
I like the look of some of those Star Wars games, because they look like quite easy to get into. So, not a large number of units required.
Oh, dude, it's ridiculous. So skirmish games are the future, really. And they're working on an expansion now that the new company is taking over Fantasy Flight. Asmodee Games is the parent company there, but where they're going to have more mass battle. You can do mass battles, or you can just do the skirmish. They're also doing that with X-Wing. That's already out, where you can do mass X-Wing battles. Hence, on the other side of my ocean mats are starfields. So we're going to do a 12-foot X-Wing battle, and also Armada.
Yeah, that's cool.
Right,
I'd like to see
Armada.
that.
So that's coming up in the future. Now I'm going to go here to Simon's post. So he had glorious 1st of June, Battle of Yashant, known in France as the Bataille du 13th Parallel and Combat de Parallel. So yeah, that was a good read. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. So it takes me to the Wikipedia. So glorious 1st of June. We can see here is
what year are we talking about here? 1794.
Yep. So I'll tell you, I got to close some of these tabs.
1794. So obviously, is Napoleon's in power at this point, right?
Right. 1794, Fourth Battle of Yashant. It was the first French Republic during the French Revolutionary Wars. So yeah, when I read through that, I would honestly say that that the British won. I don't care what France said, but because their navy was weak, they threw a lot of ships out, but the British destroyed and sank one of their major ships. No.
No, it disagrees.
So I think he thinks that the French didn't lose.
I mean, that seems to happen a lot with some of the battles in that time period. I mean, even Waterloo, a lot of the French still, you know, if you're an English person, you go to France, which I've discovered is a lot of French still believe they won Waterloo. It's quite strange. Honestly, it's you know, they don't like to accept that they lost that battle. Did you know a little weird fact about Waterloo? Do you remember? You know the Rothschilds.
Yes.
How have you heard the story about how they accumulated a lot of their wealth? Because they, after the Battle of Waterloo, there was a lot of these, these racing boats, same as after the Battle of Trafalgar. You know, there was racing boats built to kind of race back to London with the news, and the Rothschilds commissioned a ship. But they obviously knew that the British had won and the Prussians had won. They sent a few racing boats racing other boats back, with the news to London, and they falsely told everyone that the French had won. And they sent this bell, on the cart round, ringing the bell saying the French had won. So then that crashed the gilt market, the stock market, and that allowed the Rothschilds to buy up everything really cheap on the false news. And then that's how they accumulated their wealth. And obviously, then the real news came in.
Kind of the same things going on right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's crazy, really.
Wealth transfer.
Yeah, it shows you how fake news really can make you money. Even in those days.
Yes. Yeah, Simon is saying here that no, Napoleon was not in power. I guess what he's saying no to. Yes, that was during the French Revolution, and
right, yeah.
After that, then Napoleon came to power.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And
he was the Adolf Hitler of his day, kinda.
Yeah.
He was a megalomaniac. He wanted to rule all of Europe, and he tussled with the Russians, kind of like old Adolf did, and he found out what that was all about.
Yeah. So I'm trying to work out here. So we were obviously at war with France then before Napoleon came in to power, is what we're saying here. Obviously, yeah.
Right. This was just back and forth for years and years and years. Kind of like once the Protestants and the Catholics started to fight. It was just back and forth and back and forth. And everyone was taking their opportunity. Like I said, France, from my understanding history, really wanted the alliance with the Americans because they wanted that lumber. That period of time in the history of Europe, they were largely deforesting the country. Mm-hmm. There was just no large trees for making ships, for furniture and things, and they really were once they saw the New World and saw all of that lush forests like we have here in Ohio. But it's most of in Ohio is second and third growth forests. It's hard to imagine that they could come in and literally cut down entire forests that had stood for
Ancient forests as well, I guess,
ancient
aren't they? Yeah.
forests, like you
Yeah.
would see in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And they've just cut it all down, right? And sent a lot of it to Europe. Used it to build obviously homes here and and for firewood, etc. But we call them alluvial forests that are original growth forests. There's only 12 or 13 of them left in Ohio, and they're all on private land. There was a tiny piece of an alluvial forest. We did a hike a few years back down in Southwest Ohio. But it ran mostly over to a farmer's private property. So you did get to have a little piece of it, and the trees are just huge.
Yeah.
Sycamores and oaks and things that.
I guess those real long pieces of those real long trees, tall trees, are the ones you wanted, I guess, for those
right
real long pieces, straight pieces of wood.
You want those for your keel when you laid the keel, and then the ribs when you're doing, especially those first-rate ships. Those and the masts.
The mast obviously has to be one piece as well, I guess.
Yep, one long, big, thick piece. So, yeah. I think I forget. Maybe someone can chime in on the comments here. How many oak trees, it took to build one British ship? I think it was hundreds.
Hundreds, really? I guess so. Yes, you've got all the internal parts, haven't you, and all that, and yeah, makes sense.
So, I'm going to go ahead and zap history of the French names. And then I showed that at the early part of the show. I was showing talking about large trees, some that I found to print off for Star Wars Legion. I've been printing those off the last couple of days. But let's see here. How many ships? Let's ask Dr. Google. Many trees to build a ship of the line. Yes, let's do a ship of the line. And see how many it says. 2,000 oak trees. Says here.
That is absolutely nuts.
Yes, 100 gun ship launched in 1756 used 2,309 loads, being 50 cubic feet of straight oak, and 2,306 loads of compass oak or curved grain that I guess they'd use on various parts of the ship. It says here on Dr. Google. Yeah, so you're not gonna have too many forests left at that rate, considering also the homes at that time were built in wood. So then you had the Germans finally figured out about forest management, and they started. Now it's like what they do here now, unless it's for the lumber, and we have a lumber shortage. You got to be invested in lumber right now, guys. Well, maybe 2 years ago. Because we're using mostly when they build a home around here, they're actually switching over to aluminum studs and not using wood anymore because it's just getting too expensive. But they're using the yellow pine, and they'll just grow whole forests of yellow pine. It grows really quick. But other types of lumber in the States, they don't clear cut. They're not allowed to. They have to go in and selectively cut every 10 years, 15 years. So, yeah, so that's mostly in the Northwest.
A lot of that was accelerated by the use of biofuel as well, in the last 10 years, because that suddenly got really popular. Everyone thought it was green, the green alternative, which is all it is burning down forests,
Yeah, I mean, you got to plant more crop if you're going to do that ethanol. Yeah. It's basically corn liquor. That's all it is. 2,000, which were big oak. Let's see, here we go. Simon's got some 6,000 trees to build Victory.
Build the Victory, right, yeah.
2,000, which were big oak. Yeah, I mean, that's a shame. All to fight over resources, essentially, is what it was. Going on to this day, folks, they're just using steel instead. So yeah, the French Navy ebbed and flowed, just like the British Navy, depending on who was running the show, who was the king, who they were fighting at the time, how many people they were fighting. But essentially, as we get down to the Caribbean, campaign area as far as wargaming. You're not going to have these big, huge fleets. You're going to have 1, 2, maybe 3 ships, 1 frigate, and a couple of smaller ships. And their main purpose was to patrol the waters for privateers, for pirates, and to get merchant ships back and forth safely back to France and to the colonies to sell sugar. Those other spices that were in high demand, I'm sure sugar was at the top of the list. And also, of course, let's not forget the byproduct of a lot of the sugarcane was rum, light rum, dark rum. So rum was a big commodity back then. So you got to incorporate that into your game, guys. French Martinique, French Guadeloupe are also known for one other commodity, and that is beautiful women. As we have the sex trades today and sex trafficking, it was at full force back then as well. If you had money and you could buy a few damsels to add to the stable, as it were. So you get on YouTube, watch some of the videos on Martinique, on Guadeloupe, and you can see the French influence in the women. So and of course slavery. I think the video I watched earlier said at the height of the sugar plantations in Martinique, there were 60,000 slaves on the island, all dealing with sugarcane. It's pretty interesting. So you got to work that into your game. If you're going to do a shore action before you do a ship action, you need to put some damsels on the table. That could be part of your scenario. There's a
I was thinking as well. We were talking about these scenarios, which I think would be really cool, especially if say you've only got one player coming over. You get an opportunity to do some of those smaller models. Smaller model count, maybe a small game with, as you say, something like 2 or 3 ships on each side, and then obviously then obviously transitioning into that the fight on the island or something like that.
Right.
And interesting to see what mix and match of models you could use on that. I wonder if there are actually any pirate models. I wonder if they've ever made anything like that, or if there are any kind of French marine models, things like that.
Well, let's go back to Dr. Google here real quick, guys.
Yeah.
We're live on the podcast. This is how research is done, folks.
Wow.
We go to Dr. Google. So let's say
it's one of those things we don't know much about this week. this
pirate models. I'm trying to think of the various lines that are out there.
Yeah.
Let's see what Dr. Google says. Anyone on the comment section, throw out some names. I'm pretty sure Peter Pig has a line.
I'm seeing a few there, but I'm not sure what scale they are.
So we would say this would be age of sail miniatures. Let's see what it pulls up there. Age of sail model kits.
I just like Wargames Foundry does some.
Yes, Wargames Foundry. Here's Wargames Foundry. So they're out there, guys.
Yeah.
They're out there, guys. And, go to I don't think it's necessarily in this edition, but don't forget.
I'm thinking if you get a common scale, you could pretty much use even just musket, any kind of musket troop. Just paint them up a little bit rougher. Maybe their coats are torn.
That's right. And you just kind of keep it at a skirmish level.
Yeah.
You'll need some buildings. Those are readily available, especially if you have a 3D printer. That's something I'll be printing next, is more 28 millimeter buildings. Thingiverse is the resource for that, guys. Let me bring that up here, and I'll share with you guys what I've been working on this week. But this is, it's amazing to me, some of the stuff that you can. There's the oaks for the ships right there, guys.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm using those for I'm calling it my Kashyyyk board, which is where the Wookiees live. And so I'm finishing up my Wookiees. But Thingiverse, guys, you just find all kinds of stuff on here. And it's all free. I've had a few bad prints from the files here, but most of them are amazing. I've printed some of these with like the big hiding spot inside the tree. I've printed a couple of those. I'm printing one of these right now. But there's a whole variation. And the other thing I'm doing with trees, and they have other trees that you can print from these files, and that is printing them in black, the black PLA, so that all I have to do at that point is dry brush them.
Yeah, that would save you a lot of time.
Right, so I can get those nice dark recesses and still do either a gray or a browns or dark brown.
I was going to say that because painting those from lighter colors can take you a long time, isn't it? You want them to look anywhere decent, you know. So,
right, but like buildings, like the huts I printed a really nice imperial bunker out of gray. So I use gray for that because that's a lot easier to paint over. So those kind of buildings, I'm sticking with gray. But so I'm going to bring something else up here. Age of Sail miniatures. Didn't find anything underneath that. Bring up the printer. I think you're actually, they're about what I paid. So let's stop screen. And we will get over to my Gitty. I'll bring it up again. So this is one I went over this early in the show too, Sammy. But as far as making stuff, this is on Amazon for $3.38. You can literally print out of the box. And the train I've printed with this thing in the last 8 weeks has been like, it's already paid for itself, right? Yeah. I'm already on my third spool of gray PLA came today.
The last one you got before this, you had some real problems with, didn't you? Getting the plate. Was it getting the plate straight and all that? And then
it was the Ender 3 Pro, and the issue, bottom line, was on this printer right here, that print bed is really thick, right? And on the Ender 3, it's kind of thin, and it had to have been warped, right? Bottom line is, that print bed is not flat. The prints won't stay on, even if you use a ton of glue stick. By the time it gets up on the print, it literally pulls the model off of the print bed, and then you all end up with what I call a bird's nest. It's like you'll come down 2 hours later, and it's just a big mess of PLA. It's made like spaghetti with it.
Yeah.
It's a real pain in the neck.
But this one's a lot better than you. Really happy with this one, yeah.
Zero problems. It just prints and prints and prints. I did, Friday evening, I printed up all of the components. They fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, containers, like shipping containers. I'm printing big ones and small ones, and you can use those as things to hide behind for, say, like 40K or Star Wars Legion, more like Modern Warfare, things like that. So just, basic obstacles.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
Huts and buildings. For the battle group game we just did, I printed some farmhouses, either whole farmhouses, and then they'd have the exact same farmhouse destroyed. So I got a whole collection of those in 15 millimeter now that I've printed off. So for a 338, guys, if you're looking to dive into 3D printing and you're wanting to print terrain, PLA is the way to go. The Gitty is a good entry level. And it's, like I said, in 30 minutes, I was printing I don't have any here, but my little ship cards that I use for Black Seas, those red ship cards. Oh, yeah. Ship card holders, they keep track of your wounds and all that crap. But I was printing those 30 minutes after I unboxed this thing.
It was amazing on those as well, how smooth the plastic that was as well, It wasn't kind of any, for those long, flat objects, it surprised me how good quality they seemed,
It was.
Do you fit? Are those machines fed with the long kind of coils of plastic?
Yep.
Yeah.
I've got on my machine right now, I've got red, gray, and black. So more expensive machines, you can put all those colors in at once, and you can just select what color you want. But on this one, I just pull the PLA out, grab the other color, push it into the print head, boom, and I switched my colors. So like I said, some things like the ship cards I printed in red, some other things I printed in red, but my primary color is gray, right? Just like most model kits you get out of the box are gray. So they're just easier to paint and prime that way.
100%, yeah.
So tying that in with our French Navy discussion is you're going to have scenarios like we're just talking about. And it's nice to jump onto Thingiverse, find some buildings, like some tavern building, and then print up maybe like a shop. You can make your roads out of whatever you want. I've got some various types of roads made out of rubber that I use. You can use a gaming mat, and put these buildings on there. And that way, as you come across something you want to do as a game, you literally just start printing what you want. And you don't have to buy all the model kits, right? And now, as far as miniatures, for printing miniatures for, say, a pirate game, PLA is not the way to go. You're not going to get the quality with the lines. You're going to have to look at resin. We talked about it before, and it's just a whole nother ball of wax.
I think especially when you're printing that small, it doesn't seem to be quite there yet, does it? The accuracy. No. I think if you're printing something a lot bigger, then fine. But, again, as you said, you kind of want to support your model makers really anyway, don't you? Unless it's something you can't get hold of. But terrain, I think, is fair enough,
Terrain's good because sometimes you can't find the terrain you're looking for.
Or in the right scale.
Right.
And it is expensive. And, it's expensive enough buying your models and your rule sets and whatever else, your paints. It adds up.
Right.
It's not a cheap hobby.
Now, these ships is another example. These little ships. I tried for giggles. I think it was the first week I had my machine to see if I could print some of the ships. No, it's just too small of a scale. Once you get that small. So my philosophy now for me is I'm going to buy miniatures, especially the Star Wars stuff, because you're not going to beat that. The Star Wars Legion miniatures are amazing.
Yeah, they look really cool.
That's a sore spot with me because I've got, let's see, I still have 2 shelves of unopened Star Wars Legion crap out there that I bought back in December. I'm like, hey, it's Christmas, let's splurge. So, and I had a good year, and I wasn't taking any fancy trips this winter. So I was like, I just started clicking on Amazon, and you know what they say? Do not drink in Amazon, guys. Just don't do it. Next thing I know, there's cases of friggin' Star Wars Legion crap on the front porch. And I'm like, what the hell is this? I had forgotten what the hell I even ordered. I ordered so much crap. So I got an unboxing I'm going to do probably after the podcast real quick. It's because I'm going to use it on this Kashyyyk table. It's some of the train pieces like the antenna components and like little boxes and stuff like that. So I want to get that open so I can get that prepped for my game. And then
you can have a lot of fun with the terrain in Star Wars Legion. It's so varied,
Yeah, I did buy the downed ATST, which is cool. So I got that out there on the board. I've got my 2 other functioning ATSTs on the board. So I'm kind of getting it set up. I'm not playing Black Seas till the end of May. So I was going to do some more play testing with Legion. For the life of me, I've got a relatively nice group of guys that come to play, but none of them want to play Legion. So I'm like, screw it, I'll just play myself.
Right.
So yeah, there's some more stuff I've got queued up to paint, but I've got.
How do you find your local gamers? Was that from a club or something like that? Or?
No, just YouTube.
Right. Yeah.
The first couple guys were YouTubers. They were on my channel, and we just hooked up through there. One guy lived in Granville, another guy lived down in Worthington, just right by me. And we met at like a local club or a local hobby shop that has a gaming area, so it was kind of neutral area because you're always leery. Hey, is this a axe murderer?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then once we played together, we started forming a core group. Now, a couple of the guys have kind of fallen away. I'm not going to mention any names. We don't know what's going on with them. They won't respond to texts. We don't know if it's because of COVID. Some of the wives don't want them going any place that isn't
Yeah,
all
you
masked up.
get a lot of that, don't you?
So who knows? But a couple of guys have kind of fallen out of the group, and then we've got 2 or 3 or 4 more guys that have come into the group. And all of them are either friends of guys I've already played with, and they've come. They said, "Hey, they want to come play." So I'm like, "Yeah, you know them. You can vouch for them."
So, in your experience, what would you say the most popular games you're finding amongst other gamers are right now?
Number one's gonna be World War II.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. That seems to be just everywhere, all the conventions.
So you're going to be looking.
You even see that on the history channels, and the TV it's shown. It's. I remember when we used to have the history channel over here, and they might as well have called it the World War II channel.
Right.
They never covered any other history, and it seems like that's just the most popular thing by a country mile, generally for history buffs.
It's hugely popular. The next one down is going to be a lot of guys debate between Napoleonics and American Civil War. They're kind of probably, I would say, neck and neck. American Civil War is, as you know, huge in the UK.
Yeah.
But with World War II, you're looking at bolt action is still huge in its second edition. But now the battle group rules we've played in 15 mil and 28 mil. It plays great in both scales. It's more realistic, and so I've got some of those battles on my channel. So you're looking at battle group or Flames of War are going to be primarily. Some guys play 15, some guys play 20, some guys play 28. But with Flames of War, it's strictly 15 mil. They've had some fallout after version 4. I stopped really playing Flames of War at version 4. There was just some goofy stuff that they had introduced to the rules to try to get rid of the spamming of the lists that which guys were doing at the tournaments. So in order to do that, they almost broke they broke the game, essentially. Right. A lot of older players were they basically turned Flames of War into Team Yankee, which is World War III. That they needed to make them the same mechanics with the cards, more doodads you had to buy. That crap like Games Workshop does when you're list building. So they would sell you a kit of 5 tanks, but you really needed like 7 to really do the list. So you had to go buy another box.
Oh yeah,
just to get that extra 2 tanks. Mm-hmm. Crap like that just kind of really irritates me. But
that's what's good about Warlord is that they're very generous with their models. And if you buy that, some of those starter armies are unbelievable amount of models they're putting out.
Warlord and Mantic, they really are fair companies, I think. And look, I'm sure these guys are doing well for themselves, but it's not like anybody's becoming like billionaires over here, selling war game kits. So I still have my American Civil War Epic Battles sitting out here on a shelf. If anybody wants it, it's just too small a scale for me. Once you get down to that 10 mil, I'm out. I'm just out.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So now I still have a boatload of Flames of War stuff. So that's what I'm using primarily for my battle group games. And then I did buy a lot of bolt action for some 28 mil stuff. The guy we played with a lot for that has kind of fallen out of the group. We don't know what's going on, which is sad. He used to put together some of the really killer games, but who knows? That is life. People come and they go sometimes.
I come and go. So you're saying Star Wars Legion's not so popular? You're finding it hard to find players on that one?
It's at least with the guys I'm playing with. They seem to be mostly interested in Ancients and World War II.
Right. That's
why we got into Hail Caesar. A guy in our group really wanted to get into it. I had already built the starter army and just never really played. I just wanted to build and paint them, and with Black Seas is getting really popular. A lot of guys getting into Black Seas because
it's a nice variation, I think, as well, isn't it? Black Seas,
right? And I think it's an affordable game. The kits are not that expensive, and you really don't need just build a couple of fleets, small fleets. That's all you're going to need. To me, with Black Seas, it's the rules. I love the rules. They're super cool and fun to play. But yeah, it's what everyone's interested in. I think Star Wars Legion is huge out there. There's a lot of guys play Star Wars Legion, but I think it's a younger demographic. It tends to be 20s and 30s. Um, I play with a lot of guys. We grew up either in the 80s or the early 90s. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to con someone to come in and just try it because I think if they tried it, they like it. X-Wing is another great rule set. I love playing. I've got quite a few models for X-Wing, and then by next season, I'm adding in on the channel here Star Wars Armada. Paul plays Star Wars Armada from our group, and a couple other guys did express interest in that. They're basically just large ships, and then you have these teeny little ships that can fly around.
Did you ever play that 40K spaceship game when it had all the big ships? Can't remember what it's called now.
No, I did not. However, my Space Marine army is done from the starter box, and there was supposedly a game being organized by a friend from the group and another guy, but I haven't heard peep about that. So I got my Space Marines painted. I'm getting ready to start on my Necrons and get those painted, and I'll just play games of that myself because I have both factions.
Yeah, those Necrons can be a bastard. They can re-roll and come back alive, can't they?
Yes. So I'm going to build that. Here we go. Battlefleet Gothic. Thanks, Simon.
Battlefleet Gothic. Yeah, that was it.
So yeah, and then there's some new offshoot coming off. I see a lot of videos being made on some other Warhammer spin-off game. I forget what it's called, but hey, that's the game, guys. You just running a wargaming company, you've always got to kind of keep coming out with new stuff. Every 5-6 years they revamp the rules. That's just part of it. It's just how it is. So if you like playing a version, just keep playing that version. You don't have to convert. I think this latest Warhammer 40K, the Indominus box kind of hacked off some of the older players because, again, they retooled the miniatures, right? They made some changes. So I'm like, hey, just play the previous version and just keep playing that. So, but yeah, World War II, and it's fun. I love building World War II lists. And that's why I do the play tests before big games, because I want to try out the different lists. Because there's a lot to that. That's a big part of preparing for a big game like we just did. And I got punked. I thought at the beginning of that game, man, I'm looking at all these German tanks, and Philip looks at me and says, "Are you sure that list is right? There's an awful lot of tanks."
Yeah. You had a lot of Stugs as well, didn't you?
What's that?
You had a lot of Stugs as well, didn't you?
I had 4 Stugs. I had 2 King Tigers. I'm like, I'm going to mop the board with these guys.
Yeah. And the Stugs, weren't they designed with heavy side armor? They were designed for taking out tanks. Were they tank destroyers essentially?
Yes, and they stayed kind of low. The Soviets had something similar as Su-152s.
But they didn't have a rotatable turret, did they? They just could only fire straight. Yeah.
No, they were more ambush tanks. They would hide in the hedges and in the woods where you couldn't see them under camouflage, and they'd wait for you to come past and pop you off.
Yeah.
So I'm not a big fan of Stugs. Whenever I played them against my son back in the day in Flames of War, I always got devastated using Stugs.
Are they cheaper are they slightly cheaper on the points?
They're cheaper on the points. You can get more on the board, but you got to really be sly in how you play them.
Gotcha.
So here we are. We had Pat. I had a ton of Panzer IVs. He had a ton of Panzer IVs. I had a platoon of say 5. He had 12 Panzer IVs. So we're thinking we're going to mop the board because they came with mostly infantry. Now, during the battle report, it was because they used the terrain better than we did. I'm really bad at, and I'm finding this out in the last couple games, like Hail Caesar, is my flanks. I'm horrible at protecting my flanks, and Philip exploits that. So by the time I realized, oh crap, I don't really have my left flank locked down, Pat says, "What are you doing with your left flank over there? There's nothing over there." I'm like, "Yeah," and then he skirts behind me with those little freaking Stuarts. Right, and starts getting me from the rear because I'm getting up on the hills thinking I'm going to just annihilate them and just pound shots at them. He shoots up behind me and starts popping me off from behind my rear armor. The problem with King Tigers and putting those on your list, guys, is this. The bottom line is everyone runs from them. So you're constantly chasing around units trying to get a shot, because when they see you, they run and hide because they don't want to mess with that big gun. And they're slow, so you can't really chase after units. And then every round you got to roll to see if they break down. So then they just become a stationary artillery piece once they break down, unless you can repair them. And you have to pay for a repair unit on your list. So there's a lot of ins and outs to list building.
Were there any there weren't any Panthers on the table, were there?
I had 4.
You
I had
did,
4
right?
Panthers, yep. And
what's more heavy, the King Tiger or the Panther?
King Tiger.
Right.
But it's slower, it's got a bigger gun, and most things, front and side armor, you're not going to hit it. I mean, you're not going to damage it. You got to get behind it. Well, I never had that problem. Well, they did take out one of the King Tigers towards the end of the game because Philip came up with a Firefly, a Canadian Firefly, and he got me from the side and took me out. But my other King Tiger, I mean, Philip just kept running from him, so I could never get off a good shot. So by the end of the game, he was sitting in the left flank corner all by himself, and no kills, no nothing. He basically was just a waste. 190 points, just, could have been converted to something else. But this is the thing too, when you're list building, guys, especially World War II stuff. And you can do that with this game too, because there's add-ons, there's things you can put on the ships. You can choose special captains. You can upgrade your ships a little bit. They're Tetrarchs. Yeah, they were the Tetrarchs. Little John adapters. Little 2-pounders. Thanks, John. Yeah, I can never remember that name. And then the Achilles, I do remember that one because he borrowed 2 of my M10s to act as, we proxied them in as for Achilles, because the British in World War II had some killer names for their vehicles. And those little Tetrarchs, man, he sent 2 against me, and I killed 1, and then I killed 1 on their way over to me, and then he had these other 2 because he had 5 all in total. The other 2 were hiding behind the hill, and I couldn't see him. So I'm moving around, and I'm moving up, trying to put pressure on him. Next thing I know, here's 2 more of those damn Tetrarchs shooting up behind me. I'm like, where the hell did those come from? They're over here behind the hill. So it was literally very realistic.
It sounds really realistic.
So you got your Panthers. They're good tanks, but I moved mine up on the top of the hill thing.
And again, you've got a Panther, you can't rotate the turret, can you? It's almost built in to point straight, isn't it?
Oh no, Panther, you can. Yeah, it's a movable turret.
Oh, it is.
They're beautiful tanks.
Get a picture up to remind myself what a Panther looks like.
Yeah. They were more towards the end of the war. It was they finally caught on that they had to have a good battle tank that they could mass produce. That was better than the Tiger. The Tiger was a good tank, but it was a little on the slow side, and the Panthers were quicker. So they call it the tank triangle, right, John?
It looks like they developed the armor slightly better to deflect some of the shells as well. So I remember one of the biggest problems with the Panzer IV was it had all those kind of square edges, where shells would just penetrate through.
Where the Panthers started using more sloped armor on the Panther.
Yeah.
And Simon chimed in. I never did buy the Jag Panthers. That was kind of the tail end of my Flames of War stint. I was going to order a Jag Panther, which is kind of like a super tank destroyer. It was like a super Stug, but I never did buy them, and I was kind of getting out of Flames of War at that point, so I never did actually buy the kit. So
that's the tank I was thinking about where the turret didn't move. That's the one the Jag Panther. Yeah.
Yep. Now the other thing was they were kind of like the King Tiger. They were kind of big beast like that. They had a lot of breakdowns because the gearing system would break, and basically the transmission would break because of the weight.
Yeah.
And then by that time in the war, you had.
And they also used petrol, didn't they, instead of diesel, which was a big problem in the winter.
Yes, and Germans usually used the diesel tanks, but then they started switching over to gas.
Sorry, diesel instead of petrol, wasn't it? Yeah.
And
I remember when they were invading Russia, their tanks kept freezing up.
Right.
I guess of that choice or something.
Right. Diesel can freeze. If you talk to a truck driver, they put an additive in the wintertime in the diesel fuel so it doesn't freeze. Yeah. Lessons developed while fighting the T-34. Yes. So the bottom line is that it came down to they outproduced them, which is what mostly war is a war of attrition. Now, the big thing was that towards the end of the war, though, with these tanks, the slave labor they were using in the factories, they were starting to make substandard parts so that when they were out on the field, they would break. They would do all kinds of shit that would, on the construction of the engines to the gearing systems,
Yeah.
where these tanks would break down in the field. And, with the Battle of the Bulge, which is a game we were just discussing last week, here in the gaming hall, we're planning the Battle of the Bulge game probably for the fall, with a nice snowboard and all that. But we were talking about figuring out a way to play the fuel shortage, because do we play it so each tank gets so many moves and they're out of fuel? Something like that, because we kind of have to mimic that on because that's what ended up happening. They literally just abandoned tons of these tanks and just walked away because they ran out of gas.
Yeah, I guess you just have to limit the moves, and then after that, they just become gun platforms that can't move.
Right, and that's kind of how.
Or you could limit the distance they move. You could reduce the amount of inches they move to mimic that. If you wanted to not totally give too much of a disadvantage.
Right. I think we kind of came down to, could be too hard to keep track of the inches, unless we had a little tiny piece of scrap paper next to each tank recording the inches. So I think we came down to like 5 moves or 6 total moves they could make during the game, and they'd be out of fuel.
Yeah.
Something like that. And these are things you would do even with like pirate games, guys. You can come up with all kinds of house rules.
Yeah.
To make it more tricky. There was a guy on the channel that he commented on one of the pirate videos, or Black Seas videos. He says, how can you make certain ships go a little faster than what it says on the card? I said, easy. I just say it does.
Yeah.
That's part of the game. So this is a really, this could be one of the famous pirates, Blackbeard. This is Blackbeard, and his ship goes 2 inches faster.
Yeah.
Because they're just a skilled captain. Yeah, there you go. That's
what it comes down to, is the skill of the captain and the crew mainly, as well as a few upgrades here and there.
John Eagles has a good idea. Fuel tokens.
Oh yeah.
Cost a token. That's a great idea, John. That way you can keep track of it visually. So we've got those little glass beads that we've been using for Hail Caesar. We could probably use those.
Just take one away every time you.
That's a great idea. Thanks, John. Man, it's all kinds, guys, you can do whatever you want, essentially, as long as you agree to it before the game and you're like shake on it.
And that's kind of the whole point of this. Rules are made to be enjoyed and to be broken and changed. They're guidelines, and
correct.
We're not playing tournaments here.
That's what makes it gives it its flavor.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's gonna be great when you play that game. Maybe not the next one, the Age of Sail, the Black Seas one. But I think when you are playing those pirate style games with the smaller ships, and then maybe your opponent has the larger ships, you're going to need that advantage of moving a bit faster. I think that'll be entertaining.
Right, and that's where we can assign different kinds of captains and the advanced rules. And the other game that's coming up, that will be in June. I'm trying to think of the name or the date, but we're going to be doing another battle group game, and we're going to be using Torch. So it's going to be another. We've already done one in the gaming hall. We're doing another one. I think I got to come up with a scenario for that, because it's North Africa mid-war. Those are always fun.
Yeah.
I've got my desert fleece out here. I got my palm trees and my desert village.
Nice.
And I'll probably print up some new stuff to go along with some kind of a scenario. Like maybe there's a downed aircraft that's got secret plans in it or something. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. It's probably going to end up being another 3v3 player game. So it's going to be another big mega battle. So we got that to look forward to. And again, this is, like I said, part of the fun, even if you're in a club or you just have a couple guys come over and game, like I'm doing once a month. The whole reason I built the studio so I wouldn't have to go to any more game stores, which are usually, in the bad end of town. They usually have some sketchy characters there. I call them, gamers store sloths. They're like, what are they like? The guy from the big creature in Star Wars. They just sit around all day eating Fritos and
the comic book guy from The Simpsons.
Yeah, like the comic book guy from The Simpsons, exactly. So I wanted
he's to come in and criticize your rules you're playing or something.
No, that's not how you're supposed to play that. That's not right. Yeah,
a lot of that.
The rules lawyers. They're not even in the game. They're like sitting at the table over. You're playing a game, and they come over and say, "Now let's. You need to roll a blah blah." I'm like, "Listen, man, you're not even in this game."
So
that was part of the investment here. Is I wanted a nice, clean, quiet.
And you also feel like you got to get out there in a certain amount of times. You might be like bothering the owner, something like that. It's you kind of sometimes feel a bit rushed if a game goes going on a bit longer. It's nice to have your own space.
Right. Yeah, and that's why a lot of these game stores have gone out of business, because you get these guys that come in there and hang out all day long. They don't buy anything.
No.
They get everything off Amazon, and they just use your facility. Because a friend of mine and I had talked a couple of years back about possibly opening a gaming store in a more upscale area here. And I couldn't get the numbers to work. It basically lost money. But if you get in the more upscale areas where there's shopping and restaurants and things people can do with their gaming when they're up in the area, the rents are just too high. You can't get the numbers to work. But I'm like,
it's also about pulling in like the kids, So I think financially, that's what Games Workshop did well, especially over here, is they really got all the kids in, and obviously then, parents are buying presents for their kids, and that's where they were making the money. But then at the same time, it started to put off the adults from going in store, because it was all just kids in there, So it was you could tell they'd made that decision financially, and it's good to get the kids into it, but it wasn't really a place where you wanted to hang out as an adult so much,
No, in the Warhammer stores over here I've gone into, all they have is a demo table. So they want you to come in, they'll teach you how to play. They'll have a little paint booth where you can come in, they'll teach you how to paint, and then they want your ass out of there.
Yeah.
And they're really small. The stores are really small.
Yeah.
So our concept, we floated a bunch of different concepts, doing like a club concept where you had the front of the store and in the back was a gaming area, and you had to pay like a membership to go back there to use the tables, to use the terrain. We were going to do a bank of food machines, so we could provide food, sandwiches, chips, pop, but yet didn't have to run like a little cafe. Now there was a couple of guys that tried that concept, and it crashed and burned. I don't even think it lasted 2 years over here south of me, where they were in more of an upscale area, and they bought an old, I think it was an outdoor store, and they had they did pizzas and burgers and those kinds of things, kind of like a bar grill. They actually had a liquor license. They had a big gaming area, like beautiful tables, and
not getting the numbers they needed.
Well, this is the danger. They come, they game. They really don't really buy much.
Right. Yeah.
So now it's more. They've just turned it into a bar grill. I called.
It's a shame.
I'd heard they were going out of bit. They were closing the gaming part of it, and I called to buy one of those tables or a couple of those tables, and he said, "Oh no, I just got done selling them. They're all gone." And I said, "What happened?" He said, "People would just come in and mooch."
Yeah.
The gamer mooches. They would come in. They wouldn't buy anything. They would game on the gaming tables. There's another concept south of here, but it's mostly board games. It's a board game cafe where you either pay for the table for, I think, 2 hours, or you got to buy so much money worth of food, because they're serving. It's a grill, and it also has a coffee shop. No liquor. Oh no, they do have beer. I'm wrong. But that's kind of in the area down by Ohio State University. So you get all the pink hairs and the blue hairs, and Rob and I went down there and played American War of Independence, and they were blown. They were like, what's this?
I hope
You
you're
know,
coming up
they
with your
didn't know what
Confederate
that was.
flags.
Like, isn't this
Oh, sorry,
Monopoly?
Independence, yeah. I see the
And
Civil
we had a
War
lot of
there.
spectators and a lot of people interested in the game.
Mm.
And I think I bought like a pizza and I ordered a couple craft beers. But I'm like, how is this place making any money?
Yeah.
Because I think it was like 20, you had to either spend $20 in the cafe or you had to pay $20 for 2 hours at the table. And I'm like, well, that still doesn't add up.
No.
Right. Because even that space in kind of an older area by a university, it's still got to be expensive per square foot. So,
Mm.
yeah, I'm not looking to just get by.
No.
Yeah, I don't want to. Well, how am I going to pay the mortgage next month if we don't get enough gamers this week? You want to be bringing enough cash flow that um, you don't have those worries. But yeah, it's hard to get the numbers to work. That's why you see a lot of these game stores have just gone under. We have a local. They just actually expanded to their second shop. It's called the Guard Tower East and West, and they're kind of in an older area. One's actually across the street from a strip club. You know, that kind of operation. But they've been there for years. I never go there because of all the gamer sloths that hang out there. But and they've got cats in there. You know the drill. It smells of cat litter, and you're like, you know what? I'm looking for something a little more highbrow.
Yeah.
So that was my attempt here. Is I wanted to make a nice area. We could have good food. It's quiet. I have plenty of parking. I have 2 big driveways. And there's just no pressure. We can sit around and talk. There's no masks. But I think, yeah, both those game stores, they're not even open for gaming. They've been closed for over a year, and all they do is you can call ahead and order your game and then come and pick it up.
So,
I don't know how they're even staying in business.
Part of the fun is looking around, isn't it, and actually seeing the boxes. It's nice.
I'm starting to think it's a front for a drug dealer, is what I'm starting to think. Like,
Oh,
there's
really?
got to be cash coming in from somewhere because it isn't the gaming portion. So
You see a lot of that around my way when it's just so obvious. It's they're washing money, you know.
right,
It's
you're
a
like,
lot of
there's
that.
no way they could be making money
Over here, it's a lot of it is beauty salons, nail bars.
Oh, yes.
They only take cash, and
Yes.
these sunbed places where people get suntans. Yeah, I see a lot of that around here. And then the police will be up, in one of the flats, spying on them for a few weeks, and then they'll get shut down, and then you'll notice the owner's gone to prison for some cocaine charge. Happens quite a lot.
Yeah, John commented he's trying to support his local store. Anybody that's been following my channel knows the story of the guy. I've got a local shop right here in Delaware that I stopped going to because he's such the knucklehead. If it wasn't for Pokemon and Magic cards, he would have already gone out of business years ago. But again, I think he's just there's another guy I think that owns the store and he kind of just manages it. I think it's a front for a dope dealer. I really do, because I would come in there and say,
it's a strange front for a. I guess it's a good hiding place, I guess, isn't it? Because you wouldn't think.
Got to, like you said, that's a good write-off. You can say you're spending all this money, and they can launder the cash. He would just forget about my orders, and I would call and say, "What's going on with this order?" And I'm talking $400 orders.
Wow.
And I just got tired of that crap. I'm like, dude, I can get this crap off Amazon.
Yeah.
And I don't even have to leave my house.
Yeah.
So
you're trying to help him out, and
he wasn't very ambitious. Let's put it that way.
That's the problem with a lot of these passion things. Because a lot of people that are going to open up a store, a lot of them aren't going to be business minded as such. They're just passionate about it, and
right,
it tends to be the problem.
That was the old one. My wife said, "Hey, she makes amazing cupcakes." She said, "We should start a cupcake company where I make cupcakes." I'm like, "Do you know how many freaking cupcakes you're going to have to sell?"
And also, it's such an oversaturated market. I mean,
just look, all we have to do is sit down with a calculator, and it just wasn't going to make money. Now, oddly enough, after she had that idea, someone here in town came in and opened a place. I think it was called the Cupcakery, and they didn't even make it 2 years.
No.
It was gone. They'd serve coffee. She made cupcakes. She'd make you birthday cakes and things like that, I guess. But
you see that a lot here as well. You see a lot of these cupcake shops pop up, and they never last.
Widow shops.
Is it, and obviously they have to bake a lot, and so it all looks pretty and inviting to come in. But obviously that stock only lasts a day or so.
Correct. This is the big thing to get around when you get into and running a bakery these days is the freshness, and you got to have a steady. You'd have to be in a big enough city where you have so much traffic coming through there, you really go through the baked goods quick enough. But in small little towns like this, you're just not going to get enough traffic, and you're going to be throwing stuff out.
I do love cupcakes though.
Right, they are good. My wife makes amazing cupcakes, but like what you mentioned, struck a chord where I call them widow shops. Driving around from my work, going through these little quaint little suburb towns where they got the little antique shops and the little jewelry stores and the little boutiques. You'll see them. The old man died. He left her a couple million in life insurance. She goes, "Oh, I'm going to start a boutique. I always wanted to."
Yeah.
They're there for a year or two, and then they're gone, and then someone else comes in, and it's like a constantly revolving door. What you want to be in that situation is the landlord.
Yeah.
You don't care if they make it or break it. You get the rent every month. And that's kind of how a shopping mall works, right?
Well, during this pandemic, we've seen, because I live right on the edge of, I'm in the suburb of London, and what you've seen actually all the local shops, near the suburbs actually start to thrive. When they're actually allowed to open, they're actually doing all right because people are working from home. So, and all the places in the centre of town, they're dead. So I'm not sure if you're going to start to see a shift there and in money being spent more locally, on local high streets.
Right. Well, that would be nice.
Yeah. So I think after this, that a lot of people are never going to commute into cities quite in the numbers that they did before this situation.
No, and we're seeing it here. They redid what's called the Short North in downtown Columbus. They bought in apartments. That's like where my son lives in downtown Cleveland. The swanky apartments, the swanky shops, the swanky highbrow restaurants, which is cool. I love eating in those kind of places. The nice coffee shops. But with all these riots and all this nonsense that they've stoked, people don't feel safe. When we went down to the Short North to go out to eat, my wife and I, this was probably a year and a half ago before the pandemic hit. My daughter was working for Victoria's Secret, and they had a store down there. She volunteered to work down there, and so we took her down there, and we went out to eat. Well, by the time we walked 4 blocks to the restaurant, I was getting panhandled about every 10 feet.
Right.
And I parked in a parking garage, and I still felt like, hey, am I going to come back and my car is going to be jacked? Because at that time we just got that brand new car, and I'm like, look, this is going to be a prime target. But look, I'm not going to go in an area that I have even an inkling of that kind of activity. I'm going to go to downtown Dublin, which is a suburb now of Columbus. We got a couple restaurants we love to go to there. It's safe. It's upscale. There's no panhandling.
Yeah, you can actually enjoy yourself without watching your back.
Right, and they put these areas. They call it gentrification. My son says so they'll put in all this highbrow stuff, but like 1 block over, it's the slums.
Yeah,
and I don't think that's going to bleed over. And
that's London in a nutshell. You get council estates opposite £1 million flats. That's West London. Yeah, West London. You get a lot of just absolute slums opposite places where millionaires live. Very, very common in London. And and you get a lot of this gentrification as well. Some areas where they used to be so dangerous, and suddenly some artsy kind of guys go in there, and then you get all the posh little cafes turn off, and but then people forget they're still dangerous areas in the first few years. They kind of forget that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we went up for my son's birthday, and I took him and his girlfriend out for lunch. We all went up there, and like I said, he lives in a swanky area, and then he says, let's go just south of downtown. There's some really nice little restaurants. So we went where there's trash, and like we had to, walking on the sidewalk, we had to dodge like old mattresses. And I'm like, dude, why do you want to live like this?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, some of the places that he went to there in downtown, close by where he lives, had closed. Would you imagine that? And these are like these little eclectic little restaurants. They're kind of small. I'm like, well, how are they staying in business? They can only seat every other table. So of course, Knucklehead, he doesn't make a reservation. So we get there and we're waiting and waiting to get in because they can only seat you at half the tables because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how are they staying in business? Front for a drug addict, front for a drug dealer. Who knows? But I couldn't live like that. We live in the country. It's quiet. And I said, son, I said, Florida's looking pretty good right about now because like I told you, he's looking at moving to Florida possibly. So, and an upscale Boca Raton. So
I think if I was in America, I mean, Florida would be an option, definitely. I think it's got a nice balance down there. And the people there are pretty free as well. They don't take too kindly to being told what to do as much as well.
No. And it's, a lot of Cubans, a lot of Brazilians. So you get that whole flavor too.
You got that flair of diversity.
Yes. And they're hardworking people. They're not there to see what they can get. They're just there to get a chance to run a small restaurant or a small shop. And that's what you're looking for with your people coming in. Everybody's for people coming in that are willing to contribute. Right. So,
so we're going to get a lot of these people from Hong Kong coming over here in the next few years, to the UK, which is great. They're going to be great immigrants because they're such hard workers, and I think they'll really benefit the economy. And
they're all about having a good education too.
Yeah.
So they're going to be a benefit, a plus to the society. So, all right, guys, we're going to get going here. Running on 4:30. It was a great podcast as usual. I think we're going to wrap things up next Sunday with the Spanish. We're going to just talk a little bit about the Spanish, and then we're just going to free flow like we did today. We'll touch and go on the Spanish Navy, the Spanish controls, areas they controlled in the Caribbean. And then we're just going to free form it off of that. We can talk about just about anything second half of the show. So I think that's kind of the pattern we're starting to get into here. I think is really a good recipe. Do something kind of specific at the start of the show, and then by the end we can just free form it and just kind of talk about anything, gaming related or whatever. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in today, for contributing. Thanks, Simon. Thanks, John. You guys are a big help to the podcast. And again, my special guest and my co-host, Sammy. We'll see you next week, man, and stay in touch.
100%. See you guys next week.
Ciao.
Ciao.